It's Patrick Hutzel from intensivecarehotline.com, where we instantly improve the lives for families of critically ill patients in intensive care so that you can make informed decisions, have peace of mind, real power, real control, and so that you can influence decision making fast, even if you're not a doctor or a nurse in intensive care. So this is another episode today. It's actually not a questions answered episode, but it's actually another testimonial that we have from a very happy client. And I just simply want to read it out to you. It's actually from Julie, and Julie was happy for us to share it here on the blog and on YouTube. So I'll just read this out to you. Hi Patrick, I meant to thank you and your team before now, but reading about this client and his gratitude made me stop and write you right now. It is important for you to know. My brother, who has severe intellectual and physical disability, was born 61 years ago with spina bifida and hydrocephalus. 3 years ago, he had a massive stroke. They misdiagnosed him in the emergency department and he missed his chance for clot busters, which resulted in great harm. He is now, unfortunately, quadriplegic, can barely say a few words and no longer can eat. He lost so much from already having started at such a disadvantaged place in life. It feels so cruel, and yet he wants to live. Back in October, he landed in ICU intubated for aspiration pneumonia that I later found out a nurse on the floor was responsible for. She tube fed him when he aspirated. He was in originally for a UTI. UTI stands for urinary tract infection. When my brother was intubated, and intubation means the insertion of a breathing tube or an endotracheal tube in the mouth and attach it to a ventilator. When my brother was intubated, I flew to New York to try to help, as my parents are in their 80s and it was clear they needed me there for help. After 2 days, they took Jeff off the sedation and he was with us in his expressions and eye contact, so I thought he'd be extubated quickly and I would likely be leaving in a week. How wrong I was. Days went by and he couldn't pass their breathing trials. Why? He was breathing on his own until he aspirated. Then the pressure from the ICU doctors came. This is when I found you and your video series online. I have always been that 5% who advocates, asks a lot of questions, and stands my ground because Jeff always required that commitment, and I learned well watching my parents being strong and fearless for my brother. This was different. Even with all my years of practice, I can see why people really need your insights and guidance, because this is such a life and death decision, and in a pressured situation with people who you think you can trust, but to do is dangerous to your loved one. I needed to hear from you about the different agendas and the behind-the-scenes meetings that take place. That made me know that what I already felt, and gave me the courage to stand up and fight for my brother. So while I didn't become a client, you were a part of my team, and that was helping me make the best decisions for my brother. I could write a book on what we went through that 2 months in the ICU. I went through more than 3,000 pages of hospital records. We signed New York State MOLST agreements 6 times in 2 weeks, dealt with attorneys, the state hospital ethics committee meetings, and my whole family got COVID except my brother. We were led to believe that my brother would die when extubated the second time. He made it only 24 hours for the first time when he barely passed the trial, and because a mucus plug lodged, he had to be re-intubated. That is what we were told. That is what we believed, because this is not meant to be a book. I will just tell you that we chose to not have a tracheostomy because it would have doomed him to being sent away from my parents, who for 61 years have fought for him to have the best quality of life possible. This certainly would be the cruelest outcome for my brother Jeff and my parents, and he certainly would have died alone in the hands of people who never knew him and would lack the ability to properly take care of him. Our only humane option was removing the tube. The only way they could do that, and she puts that in quotes, ethically, was for us to agree to, and again, she puts that in quotes, comfort care, an ill-defined term that my mother would never agree, thus the 6 Most changes in 2 weeks. A day was picked for the tube to come out. The nurse we had grown to trust said she got approval as we requested her to be the one to help Jeff and us through this. We all were there. Coffee and snacks were brought in Jeff's room for us. They took the tube out and I watched the grayed out monitor. They grayed it so it's not tracked anymore in the telemetry room, I was told. His eyes were alert, but his oxygen levels were dropping. 97, 96, 95, 87. My heart sunk. I kept watching. 88, 89, 90, 91, 97. Jeff and God did that. He wanted to live and he just showed me he could. My mother quickly asked that he have his BiPAP, which he gets when he sleeps, for severe apnea, and she asked to resume tube feeding. The nurse we had so trusted turned on us. It was like a horror show where the ugliest, scariest demon comes shooting out of a normal person to attack you. She accused my mother, saying, "This is not what you agreed to and you signed to this, and now I'm going to have to call the doctor back to the hospital." In shock, I realized her plan to help Jeff die was more important than to help him live. The doctor came back and talked with Mum, Dad and me. I finally thought to ask him, "How long do you think Jeff will live?" He hemmed and hawed. He couldn't say, maybe months or maybe a year. But then what he was saying was telling me the bottom line, he is at some point going to end up right back in here. Well, so what? Isn't that what a hospital is there for? To help those who need help. They wanted him to die. Maybe they think his quality of life is so bad, and I agree. I can see how they can think that way based on our values of quality, that they thought he should die and they should help him to do that. Now I saw why my mother was accusing them of euthanasia, because that was the thought behind it. I'm still learning the wisdom of my 84-year-old mother. The doctor, in exasperation, left after 40 minutes of getting nowhere to have dinner with his family. The new doctor came in and was friendly. He remembered my brother from the stroke. He, however, was hurried as he was covering both ICUs. What did we want? Mum said the tube feedings, BiPAP, whatever he needed to live. Sure, no problem, he could write the orders, and off he went. Assured all was well with my family. When my family left, I stayed. The demon nurse popped her head in as she was leaving to let me know that Jeff's heart rate were much better before we had him put back on the BiPAP. Now they were high. I'm actually grateful that she alerted me, even though I believe for the wrong reasons. Why was his heart rate still climbing? Then it hit me. Had they taken away his cardiac medications? Immediately I asked the new nurse. There's no cardiac medications at all. The death doctor discontinued them under the guise of comfort care. I cannot imagine how having your heart pound out of your chest is comfortable. I immediately had the nurse get the new doctor to reinstate his heart meds and anything else the prior doctor had discontinued without my knowledge. Jeff's heart rate was in the high 150s by the time he got his medicine. Had I not been there, I think he would have died from a stroke or a heart attack. Jeff is now back at his residential group home, back with people who know how to care for him, back to where my parents and uncle and friends go to see him regularly. He's happy to be alive. I know this because he's my older brother and I've known him my entire life. I can tell by looking in his eyes. I stayed true and held strong for his will and his wishes. It is not for me to judge why he wants to live in the condition he lives. That is his choice, and it is my duty to help him. This has taught me there is so much about life and spirit that we do not understand, but we don't need to. We just need to honor it. Thank you so very much for offering your free information. You have likely helped many people you will never know. I wanted you to know how you helped us. I also want to encourage others to seek you out for your one-on-one professional guidance. In a complex emergency life and death ICU situation, there isn't much time to learn what to do. If I hadn't had all my past experience in dealing with the medical establishment, being a nurse myself, listening to God and personally knowing the hospital's former medical director, I wouldn't have been able to do this. Your service is very valuable and could help so many when they need it the most. Thank you, from Julie. Well, Julie, thank you so much for sharing your and your brother's story. And it doesn't matter that you weren't a paying client. That's the whole purpose of this blog and the videos, that we help people. If they want to become a client, they're welcome to do so. But if they read the free information and use it to their advantage, then that's the whole purpose. That's the goal here. So, and I'm very grateful that you've shared this. Now, I could probably ramble on for the next half an hour about this, having worked in intensive care for over 20 years in 3 different countries myself, and also because we're running intensive care at home. So we are dealing with many clients in the home, that are in similar situations like your brother. They have complex medical conditions, they have disabilities, they're life support dependent like your brother is on BiPAP. I completely understand where you are coming from, because I've seen the ICU side, and I'm seeing the ICU side, and I'm seeing in my intensive care at home service the disability aspect in the community. And very few people understand that those two different aspects of care have an overlap, i.e. ICU, and then complex disabilities with complex medical disabilities, or conditions, and there's an overlap, which is where intensive care at home is coming in. So I can totally understand where you and your family are coming from. I can totally understand your brother. I can totally understand your parents who love your brother dearly and who want him to have the best quality of life no matter what. And for our intensive care at home clients in particular, we need to fight this fight every day, whether it's in the community or in hospitals, to help them live. What we see on a day-by-day basis is very similar to what you're describing. People think, oh, this client, this person, this child, this adult shouldn't live. They won't have any quality of life. Well, ask the families. And like you said, those people are very complex to look after, and it takes a unique, special approach to make it happen. We need fantastic staff to make it happen, and we have fantastic staff. So shout out to our intensive care at home team here that makes this happen. It takes time to get to know clients and their uniqueness and their routine. What do they respond to? What do they want? They're often non-verbal, and how do they want the BiPAP on? How do we manage seizures? How do we manage the seizures with BiPAP, off BiPAP? It's very, very complex, but I'm really grateful that you've shared this situation with me, and I can only imagine how you had to deal with the ICU doctors, with the ethics committee, the ethics committee claiming that they are the only ones knowing what's quote unquote in the best interest of your brother. And as we all know, that's ludicrous, because those people do not understand what's happening on a day-by-day basis in the community, right? They only see their little world in hospitals and in ICU without really understanding on a day-by-day basis what needs to happen to maximize the quality of life for your brother and keep him out of ICU. It sounds like he's got a good place there in New York, which is fantastic. So your next challenge is to keep him out of ICU predictably, so he doesn't have to go through all the drama again. And it sounds like you've been through a lot of drama there yourself. So thank you so much for sharing your brother's situation and your family's journey. And I know your brother is in very good hands by the sounds of things, by having a family who's fighting for him. And again, I can't thank you enough for sharing your story. So if you have a loved one in intensive care, go to if you have a loved one in intensive care, how can you become the best advocate for your critically ill loved one? How can you make informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power, and influence quickly? Whilst your loved one is critically ill in intensive care. Well, you will get to that all-important feeling of making informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power and influence when you download your free Instant Impact Report now by entering your email below. In your free Instant Impact Report, you will learn very quickly how to make informed decisions, get peace of mind, real power and real control, and how you can influence decision making very fast whilst your loved one is critically ill in intensive care. Your free Instant Impact Report gives you in-depth insight that you must know whilst your loved one is critically ill or is even dying in intensive care. Sign up and download your free Instant Impact Report now by entering your email below. In your free Instant Impact Report, you will learn how to speak the secret intensive care language so that the doctors and the nurses know straight away that you are an insider and that you know and understand what's really happening in intensive care. In your free report, you will also discover how to ask the doctors and the nurses the right questions. Discover the many competing interests in intensive care and how your critically ill loved one's treatment may depend on those competing interests. How to eliminate fear, frustration, stress, struggle and vulnerability even if your loved one is dying. You will get 5 mind-blowing tips and strategies helping you to get on the right path to making informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power and influence in your situation. You will get real-world examples that you can easily adapt to your and your critically ill loved one's situation. How to stop being intimidated by the intensive care team and how you will be seen as equals. You will get crucial behind the scenes insight so that you know and understand what's really happening in intensive care and how you need to manage doctors and nurses in intensive care, and it's not what you think. Thank you for tuning into this week's Your Questions Answered episode, and I'll see you again next week in another update. Make sure you also have a look at our blog section with more tips and strategies, or simply send me an email to support@intensivecarehotline.com with your questions. Also, have a look at our membership site, intensivecaresupport.org, for families of critically ill patients in intensive care. There you have access to me and my team 24 hours a day in the membership area and via email. You can also call me, find phone numbers on the top of our website. You can also contact us for a medical record review. Please click on the link here. And check out our ebook section, and you can also get one-to-one consulting and advocacy with me via Skype, over the phone, via Zoom and via email by clicking on the relevant tabs on the top of our website. Thanks for watching. This is Patrick Hutzel from intensivecarehotline.com, and I'll talk to you in a few days.